Another Ottawa crony let Justin Trudeau off the hook, and you're not even allowed to know why. Ladies and gents, welcome back. That's right, the special rapporteur for the Chinese interference investigation has made the announcement yesterday that there will not be a public inquiry into Chinese interference in the Canadian government. Now, there will be an inquiry, but this is going to be behind closed doors, and anyone who accepts the invitation will likely be held back by a gag order. You won't be allowed to talk about what is discussed in those meetings, but let's get into this. David Johnston, special rapporteur, says intel that leaked from CSIS to the media sounds really bad, but if you heard the full context, it doesn't sound that bad. What's the full context? Well, that's classified. You're not allowed to know what actually happened. And here he is in his own words talking about this at the meeting that he held yesterday.
When viewed in full context with all of the relevant intelligence, several leaked materials that raised legitimate questions turn out to have been misconstrued in some media reporting, presumably because of the lack of this context. Third.
Wait, what's the context? Oh, no, we're not allowed to find out. And that's just it. Just trust me, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad.
I have identified serious shortcomings in the way intelligence is communicated and processed from security agencies through to government. Fourth, a further public process is required, but there should not and need not be a separate formal public inquiry.
So just informal stuff, just like the inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act. It had no teeth anyway, but, well, you know, we all saw how corrupt that was.
A public inquiry examining the leaked materials could not be undertaken in public, given the sensitivity of the intelligence. However, public hearings on the serious governance and policy issues identified to date should and will be held at the earliest possible date as part of the second phase of my mandate.
So he will be looking into stuff. You just don't get to hear about it, and that's where we're at with this.
Finally, I recognize this report's conclusions would be met with skepticism by some, especially by those who in good faith have worked to raise legitimate questions around these issues. The challenge is this: what has allowed me to determine whether there has in fact been interference cannot be disclosed publicly. A public review of classified intelligence simply cannot be done.
It just can't happen. You're just not allowed to have it because classified. That's really where we're at with this. Now, it's really disappointing the way this has gone for Canadians, for anybody who's been paying attention to any of this stuff. But of course, the question that has been coming back into play is, has there been too much? Like, is this guy even fit for the job? He is, of course, a personal friend of Justin Trudeau and his whole family. They're cottage neighbors. And, well, that got called into question. And normally just the appearance of conflict of interest is enough for someone to recuse themselves. But no, not when it comes to the Trudeau government. They make excuses.
In that period of time, until he became a Liberal member of Parliament and I was Governor General, I had no meetings with Mr. Justin Trudeau. I had no letters that I can recall, no telephone calls. The only occasion I recall meeting him in that period of 40 years was at the funeral of his father, which my wife and I attended. So
here's an example of you meeting with him. I think maybe he's just absent-minded. So absent-minded that he doesn't realize that he had met with Justin Trudeau and meetings did actually occur. But hey, you know, it's just out there on social media for everybody to see. Who knows? Anyway, Erin OToole, the former leader of the Conservative Party, chimed in on this in an article written to the Globe and Mail. And I'll leave a link in the description down below. It's a very interesting article. You may have your thoughts about Erin OToole, but he did make some poignant parts in this. And one thing that I thought was most poignant, he says, "You might understand how disappointed I was to learn halfway through my meeting that Mr. Johnston's report was already undergoing French translation. I was flabbergasted and realized that nothing that I was going to provide to the special rapporteur was going to affect his work." Well, what's he saying here? Well, he's saying that the report was already finalized by the time he was interviewing people about what was going to be in the report. This is really where we're at in Canada. And again, there are other good revelations in this, but this was really the one that nailed me the hardest. Now, Pierre Poilievre, in a press conference, said exactly what he thought about what was going on with this case and just how corrupt it all seems.
We see today that his ski buddy, cottage neighbor, family friend, and member of the Beijing-financed Trudeau Foundation came out and did exactly what I predicted, helped Trudeau cover up the influence by Beijing in our democracy. We know that Beijing interfered in 2 elections to help Trudeau win. We know that Beijing gave $140,000 to the Trudeau Foundation with the express purpose of buying the love and the loyalty of Justin Trudeau. And we know that Trudeau has been briefed on these matters for years and done absolutely nothing about it except try to keep it quiet and name call anyone who spoke out about it. And then in order to further sweep the matter under the rug, he put his friend, his ski buddy, his cottage neighbor, and Trudeau Foundation member, David Johnston, in charge of today's whitewash attempt. Conservatives are not buying it. We need a full public inquiry to get to the bottom of Beijing's interference in our democracy. And that's what I will deliver when I am Prime Minister. There will be a full public inquiry into this mess. And in the meantime, we will continue to push for a real foreign influence registry that exposes anyone who does paid work on behalf of a foreign dictatorship to manipulate our politics. It's just common sense. Let's bring it home. Let's bring home control of our democracy back into the hands of the Canadian people. Ramenons le contrôle de notre démocratie.
Let's bring control of our democracy.
All right. So he says it back in French. So yes, absolutely. This is of concern. And it's been of concern since the beginning when we found out that David Johnston was going to be the special rapporteur in this case. Again, I showed this yesterday, but this was the Wayback Machine. If you don't know what the Wayback Machine is, it's a way of looking at a snapshot of the internet months ago or at any given time. So you can see here, March 15th, Trudeau picks David Johnston as the rapporteur. And then on March 23rd, from 4 a.m., David Johnston was still listed as a member of the Trudeau Foundation. And then at 8 p.m., the page no longer exists. They tried to wipe this from the annals of history, but fortunately, we have the Wayback Machine, so we can see what this is all about. And well, not only that, but during this whole process, he says, well, I was worried that people might not take me into consideration because, hey, there could be a conflict of interest there. So he had somebody vouch for him. Who did he have vouch for him? Here's Pierre Poilievre saying on Twitter, David Johnston from the Trudeau Foundation wanted to make sure he wasn't in a conflict of interest in judging the Beijing's interference in the Trudeau Foundation. So he got an opinion from someone who's part of the Trudeau Foundation. So this is the man, Frank Lacobucci, who was cited as the guy who cleared David Johnston of any conflict of interest. There's a conflict of interest right there. You can't make this up, folks. It is just craziness. Now, what is really concerning about this whole pushing forward of this inquiry that they are going to go forward with in secret is they're going to give access to parliamentarians, certain class level parliamentarians, give them access to it. But if they're given access to it, this may come with non-disclosure agreements, gag orders, and the forcing their hand of not being able to say anything about it moving forward. And this seems like a bit of a trap. And Pierre Poilievre knows this, and he mentions this in that conference when he was being asked, are you going to participate in this inquiry moving forward? And he says, no, I refuse. I won't do this.
So I was already had clearance enough to be in a federal cabinet. I'm a member of the Privy Council, and so I'm already able to receive information. I will not allow any process that is designed to silence me, though. And we're not going to allow the government to silence leaders of the opposition by swearing them to secrecy on this matter of grave public importance. Their problem has been too much secrecy, not too little. And Justin Trudeau wants to cover up the facts because they're very embarrassing to him. He was either negligent or complicit in Beijing's interference in our democracy. He doesn't want us to know which it is.
Yeah, and it's really hard to determine whether it was, negligence or he was a willing participant in this. But either way, that is a damning thing for a sitting prime minister. Even the National Post making headlines here. The fatal flaw in David Johnston's Chinese interference report is David Johnston. It's him himself. Later in the report, it says, it's truly unfortunate that the rejection of the full public inquiry is likely to further erode faith that is already wavering. The special rapporteur appointed by Justin Trudeau in March to look into interference in Canadian elections included that foreign governments are trying to influence voters, that media reports have been misconstrued, and there is no convincing evidence to support that the most serious allegations that the Prime Minister failed to act on recommendations for the security agencies. It's unreal what we're seeing out there. Now, of course, Vesper D, one of my favorite accounts to follow on Twitter. Go follow him. I'll leave the link in the description down below. Justin Trudeau resorted to autocratic-style tactics by freezing bank accounts and says he admires the basic dictatorship of China. Johnson has the mind to say, my heaven, if any country should be making democracy work, it's the country Canada. Wow. Just wow. Oh, the accountability.
We're fully functioning. And just look what's happened over the past, 15, 20 years as we've seen the diminution of democracy, the reduction in the number of fully functioning democracies, and the success in persuading countries on the cusp that autocratic authoritarian governments are the way to deal with their problems. Democracy is challenged. That's not saying fundamental power, but challenge. And my heavens, if any country in the world should be making democracy work, it's this country, Canada.
Recuse yourself. Recuse yourself. If you want to make democracy work, we need to have impartiality and we need to have democracy work. Absolutely. I agree with his sentiment, but I don't agree with his actions because they don't match what he's actually saying publicly. Anyway, we'll leave this one with you guys. Let me know in the comment section down below. Should he have recused himself? Is this going to go anywhere, or should we have to wait until we have a new government, perhaps under Pierre Poilievre, who has vowed that there will be a public inquiry once he's elected as Prime Minister of Canada? Let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.